Roll call for the city council meeting of Wednesday, August 7th, 2019 at 9 a.m. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation and pledge of allegiance.
Mr. President, as always, I would ask that we remember those in our community locally and globally that are less fortunate than we are in any and every way. Ask that we remember those who have lost loved ones in our community since the last time that we were in these chambers. And also want to take a moment and thank you, Ms. Allen, for the reminder to remember those families who've lost loved ones in the mass shootings that just happened less than a week ago. Don't have words, but the human part of all of us feels for those families and those who've lost those loved ones, and also for those who are so ravaged in their mind and they have so little peace in their mind that they could do and act in those ways against other human beings. And so we want to remember all those connected in any and every way and send our prayers and thoughts and energy, however you choose to worship and send out energy to do that for all those in our community, again, nationally, locally, and globally. And finally, I ask that we remember or ask our God and Creator to give us the wisdom and the proper information and the proper temperament to make the best decisions for the citizens of the city of Erie.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Approval of minutes for the from the city council meeting of Wednesday, July 17th, 2019, and bills for payment on August 2nd and 9th, 2019. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
Do we have anybody here this morning for a repository sale? Please come forward. Good morning.
My name is Abbas Al-Masawi. I put a bid on a property for 373 East 17th Street. It's on land.
373?
Yes, I think that's what it was.
Sure.
Could you tell us what your plans are for the property, and if you have a timeline and the resources for what you intend to do with it? Is it a building or is it a vacant lot?
It's a vacant lot, like an empty grassland. Me and my dad, we own the building right in front of it, the automotive dealership and repairs right in front of it. So we've been taking care of that lot for the past, I would say about 20 years. But we didn't know it was up for sale until one of our neighbors came up to us and told us about it. So we said, might as well, since we're already cleaning it up and taking care of it. So we were just gonna plan on fencing it around so people don't keep coming over and dropping their liquor bottles and stuff like that into the grass area. Other than that, we've been taking care of it for a very long time now.
Thank you.
You're saying it's adjacent to you and your dad's business, or your?
Yeah, yeah. The building is like right here, and the lot is right behind it. It's like a grass area, and it leads on to our grass area and to our business. And there's like a bunch of stuff back there, but we've been cleaning it up lately, and I've been mowing the grass and trying to, yeah, all that.
How long you been in business over there?
Since '99.
Great, thank you. Certainly. Could you go in the office there, leave your information with the girls and contact information, and they'll follow up with you and get everything handled, okay? Right through that door. Thank you very much.
Anyone else here this morning regarding a repository sale? Anyone else here for a repository sale? That'll take us to citizens to be heard.
Jason Brendel, 4131 McClellan Avenue, Erie, PA 16510. Thank you, Liz Allen, for putting these two words out that sort of struck on me in the past city council meetings. It's called human capital. I'm here to propose that the blueprint that we left together for the conversion therapy ban, where we have citizens that come to Series City Council meetings and then we present the knowledge that Curtis Jones have talked about, the right knowledge to make sure that we are working and serving the city of Erie and her residents elegantly, is that I think we should devise a human capital council. In light of the fact that we have an amazing LGBT council working with the LGBT community, I think our greatest asset is our human capital, which is all the 100,000 residents that call Erie, Pennsylvania's flagship city, home sweet home. Establishing this will lead to we the people voices heard, listened to, and to follow through on policies that are inclusive, up to date, and that would attract residents to call Erie home. I have another one of my little pass outs, like for the solicitor, the administration, and each county, each city council person to get. Number one, the one thing that it stemmed from was from the Community Reinvestment Fund that was passed during the last city council meeting, right here. So during the after city council, I sort of went up to the Oasis Market to sit down and brainstorm, and this is my little blueprint, and I know it's a little scribble, but I think this is more of a professional protocol. Create a human capital council, each appointed by Erie City Council person, one from administration, and 2 positions open to the public, which are for the residents that are within the city of Erie proper. When a business or a current business renews their business license with LERTA, this goes again with LERTA, a requirement must be a human diversity statement or policies that would be implemented that would get approval by guidelines hammered out by this new council. Agencies and organizations like Keystone Progress, Erie County United, Erie CPR, and the East Side Grassroots Coalition, and all these wonderful citizen-centered organizations could be a part of this Human Capital Council. 2, the Human Capital Council will review each new application to the Community Reinvestment Fund and the Flagship Fund and all the funds that we are establishing today, and review all the renewals that are coming through as businesses that are still current in the city of Erie. This council will look for a human diversity statement or proactive citizen-centered points that will be led by approval by this council leaders in City Hall. And I know that we have other committees and other councils or other commissions that the city council and the administration has been put forth through our ordinances and through our charter. I know that there's several ones that are not active. Like there's one that is, I think it's called the Minority Business Council, or a business council that deals with, you know, citizens that are supposed to be proactive and work with city council and city hall and each department, like the community and economic development. This council will be a proactive and productive say in all new investments in the city of Erie. Basically what this is what the Poor People's Campaign that has been marching for the past couple of years, and what they've been trying to talk about, you know, raising the minimum wage, or, you know, making sure that, you know, it's very inclusive, that we hire local contractors, that we do what individuals that I know that have come to city council, those individuals can be part of this council, and they can sit down with the administration and the community and economic development department, and they can compromise on guidelines, or, you know, compromise on what we could do together instead of being divided. I mean, there is the 1% and then there's the 99% that has been trying to hash out policies or rhetoric or things that, you know, are trying to bring Erie together. But like I said, we just did an amazing thing. And with what I'm just echoing with what with City Councilman Curtis Jones said about, we're coming together. We're not divided. We're not in a hateful mindset. We're in a mindset of working for the city of Erie, working for its community. And the last thing is the council will align with the mission and allow the direction to be guided by the refocused Erie Compromise Plan. The refocused plan that we've been passing, that the administration has been using for guidelines, that will be a guideline and a catalyst to making this council be very effective. I hope this would be properly looked at, just like conversion therapy.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Adam Trott, 531 West 6th Street, second floor. Few items I just want to touch on this morning. One is I continue to strongly advocate for the long-term owner occupants program to be added to the LRTA. Basically, it would bring the idea that LRTA is for everybody closer to a reality. And what it further does, which is vitally important, it gives long-term owner occupants the choice. If their neighborhood starts improving, they have a choice. They can either stay with it and get protected from raising taxes, or they can decide to cash in on the raising of their assessed value and go somewhere else. But the idea is that it gives them a choice that they can actually choose to stay in the neighborhood. Philadelphia's Loop, their threshold is 10 years. If you've been there 10 years, you qualify. For Erie, that can mean that the institutional memory of a neighborhood can stay there. And that's vitally important if we're going to keep the neighborhood character. And it further reinforces on the city's website celebrating welcoming neighborhoods and celebrating diversity. This is a concrete action that can do that. Next up, I'd like to mention about the East Side, the conversations that are now started with the East Side. That's a huge step to recognize that these people have a voice. For all the people that have been trying to give them a voice over the last 5-6 years, I like that step. And I'd like to suggest some things that you could do that are actions to prove that you actually do have concern for these people. One is compare 8th and West Bayfront to 6th and East Bayfront. Compare those two intersections. Both those intersections are huge bike pedestrian feeders to the outer side of those areas. On West 8th, it feeds Harding. On East 6th, it feeds East Middle School. And just walk both of those intersections, and you can see an incredible discrepancy between the safety and the pleasantness of those two intersections. I think it would be very helpful if City Council would step up and say, we want a better crossing at 6th and Bayfront. PennDOT has said many times, when they're doing these projects, they put their hands up and they say, hey, we'll do whatever the city wants. But the city has to tell them what they want. And I'm asking that the city not sit on the sidelines and say, when PennDOT projects are happening, well, that's them, they'll do whatever they want. They actually won't do whatever they want if they're told by the city that the city wants something else. So they've been very clear about that, and you have political leverage to give PennDOT the notion of what you would want to see rather than what their engineers are calculating is needed. So besides the intersection on East 6th and Bayfront, bike lanes on Fairmont Parkway, bike lanes on East Avenue. We have tons of width in both those venues for bike lanes. Parade Street, there's something manifesting itself on Parade Street right now. With the large residential developments on the east and west side of 20th and Parade, you are creating a very heavy gravity of crossing at that intersection. And to highlight that intersection with signage, lights, whatever, so that traffic zipping up and down Parade can see, hey, there's something going on here, I need to slow down. That would show a great gesture of dignity to those residents that we anticipate are going to be crossing back and forth all day long now. The next thing is I still have a great concern about protecting the south right-of-way on East Avenue, south of the railroad tracks, where the viaduct stood. The fences continue to stay there, blocking that area, that right-of-way, and I'm worried that there's gonna be kind of a backroom giveaway vacating of that right-of-way. We need that right-of-way to stay there so we can put something back someday. I wanna call attention to how things continue to play a pattern. Okay, so I'll skip that, and I'll finally say the Bayfront Parkway, please lend your voice. Today's a presentation on their plans. Lend your voice to prioritize in-town residents over out-of-town residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Amy Murdoch. I actually don't live in the city. I live in Wesleyville Borough, but I'm here today representing the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership. Really just wanted to take hopefully only a couple minutes of your time just to introduce myself. I recently moved over to the chamber, starting in a role doing government affairs work for the chamber. Prior to that, I was the director of Erie County Planning, worked very closely, actually underneath Kathy Rosdick, and then sort of stepped up into that role once she came over to the city. It's been a good sort of natural kind of partnership with the city's administration, and we really want to make an effort to work closely with you. I know from working with county council that often the communication with the councils, that can be somewhat disconnected, and I'd really like an opportunity to start to build that relationship with you. So here really today just to ask for a couple things. We'd love to, myself and our president and CEO, have an opportunity maybe on a quarterly basis to give you an update of what we're working on and hear about some of the things that are important to you as council members and elected officials. So part of my role is not only to be a resource for our business community as they're interacting with government and local officials, but also to be a resource for you. So as you're contemplating policy or contemplating, perhaps different incentives to help drive economic development, our goal is to be a resource for you as well. So that's why I'm here. I've sent you a couple email messages recently, so please feel free to reach out to me. You have my cell phone number, my email, but also wanted to just make sure that you receive my message about Erie Homecoming, which is intended to be an investor conference for some of the Opportunity Zone projects that a couple of my colleagues have been working on really, really hard over the past couple months. And so I would say with that, too, we see this as an evolving process. I would say the projects that are currently being marketed under those Opportunity Zone project portfolio, that's sort of the first iteration. We see opportunity to continue adding projects to that. So I would welcome feedback from you on that. If there are small business owners or other kind of private investment opportunities that you see that maybe we're not seeing, please bring them to me. It's really important to us that we have your feedback in that as well. We've also been working on looking at potential federal funding opportunities, sort of in and around Opportunity Zones and in and around the city. We feel that that sort of being the organization that's pulling together these private investment opportunities for Opportunity Zones, that we can help to promote also federal funding opportunities within the city. So I would ask too and offer to you if there are organizations that you're aware of that are important to you that might have some federal funding grant requests coming up, if please share that with me. We'd love to help you sort of promote that as we do this work. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for Erie Homecoming. We'd also ask too, if there are community leaders that are important to you that maybe have not seen the invitation for Erie Homecoming, we'd love to extend that invitation to them as well. So please contact me. My goal is to always be available and to be a resource for you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Morning, Council. Randy Barnes, 109 Walton Point. Owned property in the city for about 15 years. I have immediate family and many friends that own property in the city. Seen their property values decline substantially in the past 10 years. Thank you for allowing me to present my opinion. First of all, let me ask, is Pat Howard here? If Pat Howard's here, please identify yourself, because I don't think I've ever met Pat Howard. I may have talked to him on the phone, but whatever meeting we may have had, it wasn't very impressionable. But according to Pat Howard's opinion, on July 21st, he thought that maybe I saw him roll his eyes. Pat Howard has this condition where he rolls his eyes as I walked by him. And he took the time to anoint me as a civic crank. Well, in my world, a crank is a good thing, because a crank is what is needed in every reciprocal engine that we have ever designed, is a crank. We didn't get here without a crank. But a crank is a kind of derogatory term, meaning a person whose thoughts are 180 degrees off what most people think. Pat Howard anointed me as civic crank. Thank you. I will take that and wear it proudly. Pat Howard claims he's been writing about the same things I talk about for 30 years. 30 years Pat Howard's been writing about that. Pat Howard, I would tell you the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over and over and expecting a different result. That's insanity. I'd suggest Pat Howard, I've been coming to council for how many years? How many years have I been coming to council? I've been here probably over 100 times, and I'm presenting my opinion. I've never seen Pat Howard sign it.
Mr. President,
Podium.
why is
Yes.
he attacking somebody who's not on
Stop
council?
the time. Stop the time, please.
Please, let's not turn into an argument, but please do not take a personal and, I don't know if it's, in all honesty, if it's maybe
Can we have a solicitor's opinion?
are you allowed to pick a citizen out of the
No, I'm picking
community?
this writer out of this opinion in the newspaper that went to thousands and thousands of people, Pat Howard's opinion about me.
The purpose of public comment is to direct comment to city council on actions that city council can take. If Mr. Barnes has an issue with Mr. Howard, perhaps they should have a separate conversation outside council. It does not appear appropriate that we're gonna attack one person or have an argument that doesn't involve council.
We're going to talk about the state of the city, because I stood here a month ago and talked about the state of the city, and I was derided in the local newspaper by talking about the state of the city, because the local newspaper has been writing about this for 30 years. Let me talk about the fact that the last summer of the previous administration's term, many of you on council sat there and passed a $10 million bond. I ask, please, don't put us further into debt for $10 million, please. What is this bond for? No one knew, but it was to run the city for a couple more years, for the new administration to get them by for a couple years. I didn't see anyone from the newspaper or anybody that wants to write opinions about me speaking at council members to try to persuade you to do the right thing. I didn't see them down here giving their opinion. I don't like to be called names, but that's okay. I can take it. You can call me any name you want. Council can. But I know I can't call council any names, can I? There's people in this city who have taken too much for face value. It really bothers me that when politicians run for office, they promise you all the things they're going to do. They tell you about all their experience, all the good things they can do if you vote for me. I'm a politician. Let me tell you, let's say I have 50 years of financial experience. Vote for me. I can run the city. But then we vote for that person. What's the person first thing to do? Refinance all the bonds. and borrow another $15 million, put us further in the toilet. Debt toilet. And then what do we do next? Throw our hands up and say, hey, PFM group, come on down and tell us what to do, because we're going to do anything you tell us to do, because we have no clue what to do as an administration or a council. We're going to have $180,000 given this PFM group to tell us what to do. And the Times News article that day reminded us we've been in financial distress twice in 12 years. Now, I went to school, that's an average of once every 6 years. Now, people would want to make you believe that every city in Pennsylvania goes through financial distress every 6 years. It's not true. It's not true. Every city in Pennsylvania doesn't go through financial distress. But it's nobody's fault in the administration. It's nobody's fault for the past 30 years. It just happened. These legacy pension costs just happen. But that's okay, because council and the administration has been given a pass. All the other taxpayers in Pennsylvania had to put up about $160,000 of their tax dollars to hire PFM in Philadelphia for the second time in 12 years to come and tell the second administration what to do. They told the last administration what to do. Didn't work, did it? Have anyone on council come up with any advice? Have you looked at that last plan? Have you put down a list of bullet points? Say, these are the things we hope to do, we want to do, we expect PFM to tell us to do? No. There's no time for that. We're worried about drinking fountains or where people are going to smoke. There's no time to run the city's finances, or there's a lack of desire. It's ironic that people that have made their living expressing freedom of speech won't sit there and listen to another citizen express their opinion. Thank you very much. It shows me a lack, it shows me this. There's like 3 monkeys. Thank you.
Any other citizens to be heard this morning? Any other citizens to be heard? Hearing none, Rose, we'll move on with the agenda.
Ordinances for final passage. Council File 16-113, official ordinance number 51-2019. An ordinance in accordance with the 2019 City of Erie General Fund budget, the sum of $40,000 is appropriated from unappropriated and anticipated revenue for use by the City of Erie. By Mr. Kwiatkowski, second by Mr. Jones, the council file ordinance bill number 16-113, and now known as official file ordinance number 51-2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 51-2019 finally by a 7, nay 0.
Rose, Mel had a conference call at 9:30, so I don't know if we actually can count his vote while he's not officially here.
Well, we can count it if he doesn't leave before coming back in.
Okay.
As long as we have him before the adjournment.
Very good, thank you.
Council file number 16-114, official ordinance number 52-2019. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $500,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to provide for the expenditure thereof for the construction phase of Cranberry area pedestrian improvements. By Mr. Witherspoon, second by Mr. Winarski, the council file ordinance bill number 16-114, and now known as official file ordinance number 52-2019, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 52-2019 finally by a 7, nay 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council File 16115, an ordinance, city zoning planning recommends amending ordinance number 80, 2005, Article 303, signs by adding recommended regulations for electronic display and message center signs under the illuminated sign category. It is also recommended that the provisions in section 303 also be reorganized and amended to group the existing regulations together under similar category and Article 6 definitions. By Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance number 16115, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kratowski.
No.
Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
No.
Oh, okay. City council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16115 by yeas 5, or yeas 5, nays 2 on first reading. Council file 16116, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $5,500 from appropriated and anticipated revenue from the Sons of Lake Erie. By Ms. Schaaf, second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance number 16116, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kratowski, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16116 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council file 16117, an ordinance appropriated the sum of $8,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue from Star Athletic Club for the Bureau of Fire of the City of Erie. By Ms. Schaaf, second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance number 16117, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kratowski, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16117 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. That'll take us into new business, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move the balance of the agenda.
I'll second it.
Any separations this morning?
All right, moving the balance of the agenda. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kratowski, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. That, we have a waive rules, Mr. President, just something that came down late from the administration. I think, the solicitor spoke to you about it in caucus. Okay, voting to waive the rules. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kratowski, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. By Ms. Allen, second by Mr. Winarski, resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the proper city officials are hereby authorized to enter into an agreement with Quintella Inc. to provide professional service for the Erie City Wi-Fi project in accordance with the agreement marked as Exhibit A attached hereto at a cost not to exceed $300,000. Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Kratowski, Ms. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. That'll take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Allen.
Okay. I had not had this on my committee report. I have a couple of things to talk about in that regard, but I wanted to respond to the person who came up to the podium. I was actually going to try and sit here and listen to him until he started attacking a member of the media. And the reason I think it is important to stand up against that kind of language is because of the atmosphere that we live in today. We know that there were people who were killed in a newsroom in one of the mass shootings. We just prayed for victims of mass shootings. And I will not sit here and listen to somebody come up and make personal attacks on anyone, including people who have a voice in our community. That kind of brings me to my second point. I'm hoping that at some point, City Council will work together to send a letter of support to the mayor of Pittsburgh, who is championing gun legislation in the wake of the synagogue shooting there. We have had people, and I think people know that I have said that when it comes up, I will vote in favor of the smoking ban in Perry Square. I hope that the same people who are concerned about the image of people smoking and drinking in Perry Square will also be concerned about the pro-gun rights people who were there on Saturday. As you know, the NRA targeted a number of municipalities throughout Pennsylvania, saying that municipalities did not have the right to enact gun legislation. We had an ordinance in the city that prohibited guns in city parks. And because of the NRA, City Council a few years ago repealed that ban on guns in city parks. The mayor of Pittsburgh and Moms Demand Action, this is a fight that has to be waged at the state level to give municipalities back the right to regulate weapons in the city, and I think that's something that we need to start thinking about. I think it breaks my heart that it could be illegal to smoke in Perry Square, but it's legal to open carry. So I just wanted to point that out. I wanted to thank Adam Trott for talking about the Loop program and also for talking about the safety of parkway crossings. I want to thank Kathy Schaaf, who really advocated for a new pedestrian warning light on Cranberry at the Bayfront Parkway. I walked past there the other day and I was like, yes, Kathy, thank you for advocating for that. One of the things that has occurred to me, and this is thanks to Sonia for a conversation she raised when we were talking to the mayor, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. She said, when are we going to start to do something for the east side? And that was like a light bulb going off for me, in that we tend to we talk about the east side as if it's a monolithic neighborhood. And there are a lot of other neighborhoods on the east side. And I realized that, I've never walked in Sonia's neighborhood. And I think it would be great if City Council would do that, if we'd get into a lot of other neighborhoods. I thank the mayor for going to the Central City Neighborhood Watch meeting on Monday. I was there, and the people in Central City, which is the area near the Booker T. Washington Center, pointed out that there had actually been a comprehensive plan drawn up for their neighborhood in 2006, 2007. And Scott Henry from the Redevelopment Authority has that information. So if we don't have institutional wisdom and memories, we don't even remember that. And there were good questions raised there about crumbling sidewalks and walkability, and it's the homeowner's responsibility to replace the sidewalks. It's something, there's a guy from Jenkintown who did a blog on sidewalks and walkability. He moved to Pennsylvania from Massachusetts and was stunned when he had to pay $3,000 to get a sidewalk fixed. I think it's something we need to take a look at. A number of us went on a tour of the parking garages with Christopher Friday last week. That was another good opportunity to look at the infrastructure needs there. I want to just ask, again, we've been getting thank the administration for giving us information about LRTA. I did have a concern that I raised at a finance committee meeting about when properties come off of LRTA, are they paying their property taxes? And I was told that the city treasurer's office tracks that information, and that it's likely that maybe about 10% don't pay their taxes, because that's kind of the 10%, I don't know if you would call it the default rate for most property owners. When I contacted the city treasurer, it turns out they don't track that. So I'm hoping that when we have a new treasurer in there, I think Kaz was interested in me raising the question, that we would be able to track that.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was able to tour the house on Walnut Street that Mrs. Nelson talked about at our last meeting, and I was very impressed by all that she's doing, and I'm hoping that everything goes well with her. The house is a beautiful, historic house, like all of them in that neighborhood. It's got strong features in it, and I am sure that hopefully, if all goes well, it will be a good place for women to continue their journey. I went to the Welcoming City certification requirements that Nikan had put on at the Erie City Mission last week, and I was once again very pleased that the people had so much to share at the tables. I love that sharing time when we get to know people that we don't know. I have participated in the Count Me In survey the other day, knocking on people's doors on East 33rd Street, and I plan on doing that tonight if the weather prevails. And that's another opportunity to get to talk to people in the neighborhood about their needs, the pros and the cons, and I think that's a great thing. The Parking Authority tour was very good. It brought an awareness to, as Liz mentioned, the infrastructure needs there. Welcomed, after that, went down to catch the tail end of the new fire truck that was on display for everyone to see, and it's great to see that we'll have a new fire truck now, because the old one was over 30 years, and what a difference. They had the old one and the new one there, and you could really see the newer equipment is going to be great. I'd like to thank people like Jason Brendel, who volunteered for the Joanna Connell and the neighborhood there. He's a great volunteer with the Serve Erie project there, because that's a part of his neighborhood. It's a part of my neighborhood. And I used to go to Joanna Connell back in the day when there was a library there. We used to walk and get our library books out there. So that neighborhood is seeing a great revamp of the Joanna Connell playground and the ball field there. So thank you for being a part of that. I went to Rochester recently, and I love talking to people, and there was a fella there who owned business property that he's lending out for a dog park bar. So anyone out in Erie, I thought that was a pretty good I don't drink, but it's like a big social aspect that they were opening up. It hasn't opened yet, but I thought that was pretty interesting. The concept of a dog park bar. So if anyone's out there with the monetary means, that's something different. And again, in Rochester, I wasn't familiar with that city, but so we did a lot of walking, and again, it does have the blighted properties and the good properties, so you see that. And as far as the gentleman talked about the drinking fountains, I am going to continue that. Just as finances are important, the need for a drinking fountain it's hot out there. It's been hot out there. We've had a really hot summer, and yesterday I was walking by and the daycare children were walking back up the street to go back to their daycare, and their faces were sweaty, hot, and you could definitely tell that they were going to be getting a drink once they got back to their daycare. So I also want to thank the engineers in the engineering department. I think his name is Bill, Leanne said, who really championed the pedestrian signals. And former resident Todd Scalise, those artistic steps are still a wonderful thing on 14th and Sassafras Street, where you have the Perry face and you can go up the steps. I think that's pretty cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Arrington.
No report, Mr. President.
Mr. Kotowski.
We attended the Airport Authority meeting recently, and I hope to convince them that when they open up their new restaurant and some of the changes they've done there, I want them to invite council. I'm going to put that request in so you can all see firsthand what has happened out there. I took the Parking Authority tour along with Liz, Kathy, and Sonia. It was no surprise to me because, as a disclaimer, I worked there a number of years ago, but it's amazing how in a short period of time it has gotten even worse. So there are some issues there that, you know, things we probably need to meet with the Parking Authority as a council and not just the administration and work out some of the issues. The O&E pension meeting, I met with them, and prior to the meltdown recently, they were doing very well. I'll have an update on the pension plan next week as the aggregate board meets this coming Monday. I agree with Liz about the city park. When you think about it, you know, you can carry a weapon there, but you can't smoke or drink in the future. Which brings us once again to City Hall. Why we don't have a security system here is beyond any kind of explanation. People walk in and out here too freely. During our night council meetings, I won't say, but I'll be glad to show someone how you can have full access to the building. I've discussed it with the chief. We need to quit thinking it can't happen here, and it can. I recently had to attend a religious service in a southern city, a lot smaller than Erie, and we were guarded, unfortunately, by a police officer. Now, that may or may not be coming here, but it is the world today. And I'm probably one of the few people that have actually fired both those weapons and know that they're not for hunting, and they're definitely not for a lot of things. They're intended for one use, and that's what I got sworn in when I used them. But having said all that, it's time I think we look long and hard here about how we allow access to City Hall. And if anybody watched the Discovery Channel last night with the billionaire, it was kind of great because it showed the good part of Erie, but it was also very embarrassing. When I had to look at 12th and East Avenue a number of times, and you got to remember, the people that watch that don't know our city. They saw the good parts. They saw Ron DeVecchio, they saw Larry, they saw the other people that were in the, but they also saw that building. Once again, I look at administration and code enforcement has to get out there and do their job. Okay, that thing has been talked about since the late Jimmy Thompson was sitting up here. And when we have to watch it on TV and now millions of people will watch it, that's a bad impression of Erie. That is and it looks like it's getting worse there as I drive through there. And that's not the only one. You know, I don't know what the future shows are gonna show, but that's not how we want our Erie to be seen. And I think it was great from one point. I think it finally woke us up that, you know what, everything's not rosy. There's a lot of hard work ahead of us, but that's not how I want to be portrayed on national TV. It showed the good part, like I said, with the great people that reside here, the great new businesses, but yet, there in the background was 12th and East Avenue. I don't know what you call it, the Dresden War Museum or what, but, you know, code enforcement has to start getting out there and doing their job. We gave them all the tools, so let's see some results. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. I would have loved to attend the fire department dedication, but unfortunately for all of us, we were not notified. And that has to stop. You know, I want to be part of that too. I don't know who screwed up, but some of us got the message and some of us didn't. We were at a meeting. We could have rescheduled that meeting a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Relatively quickly, I'd like to agree, first of all, with Mr. Kwiatkowski in relation to security in this building. It's been a concern for a long time. Actually, when I first ran in 2005, that was like one of the hottest topics, is security, because there were some shootings at that time, regrettably, in public spaces like city halls and courthouses, et cetera. So I think there should be, regrettably, on some level, it's the world we live in, the times we live in. But on the other hand, if we can, we're blessed in Erie where we haven't had any significant issues in our city hall like that. We've had some rather exuberant residents from time to time, but no significant safety concerns. I will say this is not a criticism on the previous administration or anything, but when we did have a citizen who was very upset and angry and loud and disrespectful and disruptive on the 5th floor, the fifth floor became reconstructed so that was not so much, so that there was not so much access to the mayoral suite. If you've been around long enough in City Hall, you know the difference of the 5th floor. So I think that we could do some preventative measures, whether I don't know what that means, and sometimes discomfort. Some of us are willing to give up a little comfort for a little more security. So just to consider that, I think would make sense. Citizen mentioned about the disparity between 6th and Bayfront and 8th and the Bayfront, and I agree, but I think it's kind of almost apples and oranges because you can't compare the way those spaces are configured. I think we should always look to make every space, especially high pedestrian crossing areas, more safe, more friendly, and pedestrian friendly, but also there's train tracks that are incorporated in that 6th and Bayfront area. It's a lot wider and different space, and so we do need, I think it would be great to have some improvements there, but sometimes our comparisons aren't fair because it's like apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but they're quite different, and so I would like us to, again, just kind of remember that. When it comes to the rules of council and decorum, is really one of those things that Attorney Betza mentioned, that, you know, the purpose of citizens to be heard is to be able to articulate concerns in the community, to this council, to this body, to the administration, and all elected officials represented here, not to be a bashing session on council members or citizens in the community. And we had some, you know, several years ago, that was a big issue in these chambers, and we solidified some, you know, rules of council to even say that, you know, there's not a rebuttal back and forth between council and citizens because it often got to be too explosive and disruptive. And so I think that just makes sense to do that. And I'll, you know, say what Attorney Betza said was that if you have a personal issue with someone, have a personal conversation with them. Now you may not get that from them because, you know, you can't control what anybody else does, but at least, you know, you've done your part to be as civil and civically appropriate and respectful as possible. I think those things mean a lot, especially in the place of business where the city's business is handled and done in the best way we know how to do it. I'm absolutely in support personally and in principle of you know, connecting with the mayor of Pittsburgh and whatever we can do to promote safety, security, because it's not always enough to have a visual after somebody's been shot or murdered or killed. We have to try to do some things. Preventative medicine is really important, I think, as well. I'm very excited about the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership, the Erie Homecoming session. I think you know, I'll say this, citizens that come up to share their opinion, we value it even if we don't agree with it, or if often agree with their presentation of it. But it's important to hear because it does often spark ideas in our mind, and it kind of invigorates us to do some different things. But the citizen who is not elected or doesn't serve in the administration or serve in City Hall in some way has the liberty to be tunnel focused or totally focused on what's their issue. And us as elected officials, the mayor's staff, have the responsibility to be inclusive of everything that's necessary for our city to be successful, which means that we can't just focus here, but we have to focus on a variety of different things and try and spin all those plates and do the best we can with all the work that needs to be done. And we're privy to information that is not that it's hidden, it's public information, but we interface with it all the time. I'll wrap up. We interface with it all the time, and we have, again, decisions that need to be made in this space that directly connect to this space. And if I make a decision with this in mind only, it makes sense to do a certain thing, but when I have to compare it with everything else, it makes me change the decision because it has different ramifications. So I said all that to say we all have a part to play. Let's continue to play our part. Let's continue to do what we can, like these organizations that donated money to the city. You know what I mean? Some of them are obligated because of the nature of their funds, but some of them out of the sincerity of their heart. Or they could have given it to another nonprofit organization. So let's keep doing the work that we're doing. Let's keep striving. Let's keep making our community great and smart and safe as much as we can. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Just a few items. One reason I voted no to the ordinance regarding the signage in the city right now, I guess the biggest thing is the brightness of some of these LED or neon signs, and I guess how are we going to enforce what is too bright or what isn't bright enough? Is it something that's going to affect a business negatively, and how are we going to exactly gauge what is too bright and what isn't bright? So till I get a little more information on that, I know Mr. Kwiatkowski didn't vote in favor at all so just yet, but just want some more information before I move forward on that one. I do have an update with the citizens response office we have here. Some of the issues I called on have been taken care of. Others are still being worked on, whether it be lawns or cars or whatever, but there is one that they said they called the owner of the property, and it's a bank in California, which they haven't heard back from. Meanwhile, we're on month 3 of the lawn not being mowed in a very nice neighborhood. It's one house that's sort of ruining the neighborhood. One thing I did think of, and I don't know if we have to do something as council with an ordinance or something, but with the summer help we hire every summer, with the summer jams program or jobs program, there should be somebody out there that can go around to the dozen or 2 dozen properties and get these lawns mowed, and then some way or another put it on that property that is being owed to the city whenever they get sold or it changes hands. But if we wait for some bank to call us back from California, you might as well go do it yourself. But with that, we'll still keep in touch with them on that. They are, Boss Sale up there is being very active for me and trying to help me out on a few issues. The only other thing, I want to thank the Sons of Lake Erie for thinking of the city of Erie once again. $5,500 donation to the city, and the Star Athletic Club. They've been a partner in the city for a very long time. They've used a lot of their gaming funds, and they've given it to the fire department for different uses, and they've been doing that for a number of years, so I want to recognize them also. Other than that, that's all I have this morning. City Controller? Ms. Lamus.
Good morning. I have a few things. First of all, there was a comment about bike lanes on Fairmount Parkway and a few other areas. I wanted to make sure council was aware that we have received funding. We will be embarking on an active transportation plan that will look comprehensively at the city streets where we can put in bike lanes, you know, pedestrian travel, walkability, all that kind of stuff. Also in reference to East 6th and the Bayfront Parkway, I'll just remind everybody that back in several months ago, I can't remember exactly when, we did receive funding. There's currently a multimodal feasibility study going on through PennDOT to investigate alternatives for pedestrian and bicycle paths and or crossings along the Bayfront Parkway from East 6th all the way to the Broad Street interchange. The approved funding for that was $100,000, so that's going on right now. Also in terms of Parade Street, with the East Bayfront neighborhood plan that was developed and the Count Me In initiative that's currently going on, Parade Street is being looked at for development opportunities. Also want to remind residents that we're, as Councilwoman Schaaf commented, we are also going door to door in the Academy Marvintown area, seeking input from residents about what they love about their neighborhood, some improvements that they'd like to see, and what they'd like to see happen with Bakersfield. Last night we made it out, even though the rain came down, and I think 4 or 5 neighborhood groups had to shut down their National Night Out programs, and I know some of them will be rescheduling. We did make it out to 10, and it was great to see all the neighbors out and the passion that they have for their neighborhoods, and to see everybody coming together to make that a nice evening. A lot of the groups moved inside, and it was a really nice night. While we were out, we distributed, I know when we met last time with council, we showed you a draft of the housing resource directory that we put together. So this is a new thing. We've circulated these to the neighborhoods now. We brought some down for council today, and we'll be having them at the greeter's desk. And the code enforcement will be using these, the redevelopment authority will be using these as they go out. But this lists all of the resources that we know that are available to residents in the city of Erie that maybe need housing repairs or first-time home buyer help. And we will also be posting this revised brochure on the website. And then finally, I wanted to remind people that Celebrate Erie is next weekend. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It'll be from 12 to 8. It's completely a free celebration of our community, our local vendors, we'll have local food trucks, local restaurants, local bands, local businesses, and all the cultures that make Erie home. And we're looking forward to celebrating all that next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, August 16th through the 18th. That's all I have.
I have nothing.
Well, thank you even more. Rose, I believe we can adjourn.
All right, city council adjourns at 10:10. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Jones, Ms. Klausty, Ms. Schaaf, Mr.